Hi. It's a little after 5 o'clock in the morning, and I just woke up from a dream where my new friend was trying to have her brother beat me up, and instead I started to hit him. I don't know. And rather than try to go back to bed, I thought that I would get a little something done before the toddler wakes up. So I have been thinking about taking this all out and reorganizing my stash a little bit so that I know what I have and what I have planned for it. I think that would be beneficial. It's going to be easier to do before he wakes up, so why not now? But I thought I would, film it just for fun, since it's going to be a whole process. All right, let's go. You can't see anything, can you? Is this thing on? Hi. How do you do with awkward silences? Oh. Hi. Hey there. Hey, how's it going? Hello and welcome once again to 222-2263. That was my dad's answering message machine for decades. It was the best. Unfortunately, we don't have that phone number anymore, so feel free to try and call it. No idea if somebody else has that pleasure now or not. I have not attempted to call it myself, but for a while he was trying to emulate the Micro Machines commercials. I don't know if you remember this. He just talked really fast. Hello and welcome once again to 222-2263. You have reached the Thompson residence. You guys, where have I been? I just can't even. Hi, I'm supposed to introduce this YouTube video now. Whatever. Hi, I would love for you to come and be my friend on the interwebs, since I don't see too many people in person very often anymore, which is nobody's fault but my own. I work weird hours and I never leave my house. Hi, I'm Kat. I am still calling this YouTube channel Librophiliac Knits, but let me tell you, it has not been a knitterly sort of month or however long it's been since I saw you last. I have really had an interesting go of things. I will insert some B-roll here if I can figure out how to do that, so that you can see the sorts of things that I have been up to. Since last we spoke, I have done a bunch of stuff, and I really have been sort of, I've been enjoying a lot of the projects I've been into, and I don't I don't want to feel like I should, feel bad about the fact that I haven't been knitting lately. It's not that I lost my mojo, it's just that there are a million other things to do. And sometimes something else takes precedence. Do you allow space in your own life for more than one hobby? So let me see. I had to try and go back and look at my last video to see, like, where did we leave off? It's been a long time. Since I saw you last, I completely reorganized the place where I store my yarn that was sort of above my head in the last video. Did you like seeing me in that space instead of this one? I'm in my bedroom right now with my fancy screen behind me to sort of block whatever I don't feel like showing you. And also just to give it like a nice background. This screen has been in my family for many decades. It was my mom's. She gave it to me when we had a crib in here. It's a big room, so we were trying to split it up so that the baby and the parents could all have their own sleeping spaces. But he just very quickly figured out how to lean out of the crib so he could see around it and keep yelling. So it didn't really serve any purpose, and now it's just here to be a YouTube background. Yeah, so I reorganized, had a look at all my yarns, reminded myself that I have more yarn than I know what to do with. Thought again about what I would like to knit and with what. In an ideal organizational universe, I would go through all of my yarn and like lay it out so that I could be like, this yarn is for this project and this yarn is for this project, and just keep, a conveyor belt of incoming projects happening with the yarn that I already have. The problem is that I am a one-off impulse buyer more often than I am a sweater quantity buyer. And the stuff that I really admire that other people make is not necessarily, number one, the stuff that I have yarn for, and number two, anything I would wear. I have to really take some time to know myself. Know thyself. No, I have to be realistic about the fact that I love tank tops and sweatshirts, and if I'm going to knit myself sweaters that I expect to wear, they need to be as comfortable as tank tops and sweatshirts. They need to be something that meet my needs, so they have to have pockets. They need to fit me, which means I have to pay attention to gauge, which I don't like to do. Have to be colors that I'm interested in wearing, not like, I love obnoxiously bright yarns, but what do I wear? Black, gray, blue, all the time. So, this even was out of my color wheelhouse because it's very like, it's got kind of a 70s vibe going that I enjoy, but it's not my usual color scheme, clothing wise. So, and as my family likes to call it, this is my signature color. So really I should just be knitting everything in this sort of turquoisey aqua color family. Yeah. So after I had reorganized the yarn, I put some books in randomly too. I decided that, my reality is that yarn is not the be all end all of the things that I want to look at. And it made the bookshelf more aesthetically pleasing to me, to change how I was stacking things, and to put some books in there. And I think it looks really good. I'm really happy with it. Again, B-roll insertion. And I was then gearing up for Chase's birthday, which was October 6th. He was turning 4. And I'm bad at planning things. I love a party, but as far as planning a party, I'm terrible. So I absolutely was planning to have a party for my child. And so a couple weeks before, not having invited anyone yet because I still was like, well, I don't know if this is going to work. We got all this stuff going on, da da da. I started to clean my house, and I started to clean, and I was cleaning, and I was cleaning, and I was cleaning, and I was cleaning, and I was feeling really good about everything. And then I got to the living room where I was filming the last episode, and it has this terrible brown shag carpet. And I was gonna try and vacuum it, which that carpet has stank like dog since before we moved in. They covered it up with smells while we were viewing the house. But by the time we moved in and it warmed up, we bought the house in the winter, and we discovered when everything thawed that there were a number of problems that we did not know about, which was very upsetting. But, nothing so expensive that we could really go after them for it. So c'est la vie. But this carpet, it was an ugly color. It didn't go with, what I imagined for myself. My child had fallen asleep on it and woken up with his face looking rashy. It was just gross. And so I was about to vacuum it, and I just got a wild hair. Excuse me. Check out this beer Chopper got me. It's called Vote. It's an IPA from 56 Brewing, which is a woman-owned local Minnesota company. And pretty good. It wasn't his favorite, but it's not my problem. Where was I? Oh yeah, I got a wild hair. Instead of vacuuming the carpet, I ripped it out. And so what was supposed to be just like a house cleaning adventure to have a toddler birthday party became this super intense. And of course, I started ripping it out the day before I had to go back to work. So all day Thursday before I had to work on Friday and Saturday and Sunday, I was ripping this carpet out, and I got the carpet and the carpet pad up, and then I had to get all of the tacking strips along the edges of the room. And it's not a square room. It turns out to be sort of a heptagon. No, because it's square on 3 sides, and then it has a 3-pointed 1, 2, 3, and then square underneath. So, hexagon, I guess. I thought maybe it was 7, but no, it's 3 and 3. Anyway, so it's a hexagonally shaped room, and that means that it had a lot of small pieces, and these tacking strips some of them must be as old as I am, if not older, and they did not want to come up. So that was a whole process. And then because of the shape of the room, there were a lot of seams in where they had put the rug pad down. So then getting pliers and prying up all of the staples was a process. And at the end of it, there is lovely hardwood underneath, but it was stained all to hell. And I have refinished the floors in the house before, but I don't currently have that bandwidth. So I just, put the furniture back, did the best that I could, washing the floors, put everything back. And right around the same time, I got some workmen in here to replace my tub and shower in my main bathroom. There was nothing wrong with the one that I had previously, except that I grew up with a deep bathtub and a deep love of taking baths. And all of my adult life, I have lived somewhere with an inadequate tub. And I do live only 15 minutes from my parents' house where I grew up. So I could just go back there and be like, I'm borrowing the tub, I'll see you, and just disappear into the bathroom. But I wanted to have my own. And so I finally made that happen. Meanwhile, while that was going on, the neighborhood had noticed a stray dog. And this is where the knitting really goes out the window, because while the guy was here installing the new tub and shower, that stray made it into my yard. And he greeted the more friendly of my two. I have two dogs, a chocolate lab who's about 2 and a French bulldog who's about 10, maybe 11 now. I can never remember. And the Frenchie is dog aggressive on leash. He's always lived with almost always lived with other dogs, but had sort of a traumatic experience at a dog park where a dog that looked just like the dog that he lived with attacked him. And he didn't confuse the fact that it wasn't the dog that he lived with, but after that he was not interested in being friends with any strangers, dog-wise. And, it's sort of to be expected, but it sucked. He's super ridiculous on leash, and he would go after people who were just minding their own business if they were carrying a plastic bag that looked like maybe it could be a dog, things like that. And his vision's not great. Has never really been that great. Sort of, what do you call it, nearsighted? He's a myopic old man at this point. And so he would scrabble and pull to get to people carrying a plastic bag. And once he got to the person, or got close enough that he could finally understand that it wasn't a dog, he would lose interest. He had no interest in greeting a human. He just wanted to pull and act like a psychopath in hopes of attacking this imaginary dog. Well, I guess, he sort of finally got his comeuppance. It's really terrible. I was really hopeful. It's been a really rough month. Have I said really enough in the last sentence and a half? So while the workman was here installing the bathtub, the stray came to my yard. My daughter had seen it. My partner had seen postings on the Nextdoor app about other people who had seen it. I was sort of hopeful that it was a female dog and that she would be friendly with my dogs and that we could rescue her. Well, for starters, male dog. Greeted very nicely my chocolate lab. I didn't even let Ziggy try because that was just not going to happen. And he was he's super skinny. This beautiful white and gray dog, maybe a pit bull, maybe an American bulldog, maybe an American bully breed. They're not a Staffordshire Terrier, but whatever, a gorgeous dog, but skinny as all get out, very obviously starving and scared to death of humans. So it wouldn't come anywhere near me. Greeted my dog, greeted my cat that goes outside, didn't have any problems. And that whole week we played this sort of push and pull game. I started feeding him in this kennel that we have built onto the back of my garage that was there when we moved in. The previous owner's dog must have been sort of destructive or just left alone too often. I don't know. I don't know that I approve. I don't know. After buying the house, we discovered the first night sleeping in the bedroom with the hall light on and the door closed that the bedroom door here in the master bedroom was broken. The dog had scrabbled at one of the lower panels to the point that it was detached and had been sort of tacked back in place with a cross beam to hold it where it's supposed to go. So that was sort of an indication of how desperately this dog was always trying to get at their owner. I don't know. So I started putting food out in the kennel with the assumption that, eventually maybe I could just close the door. And eventually that is what happened, but it took a while. I sort of was very tentatively trying to meet this dog, and he was not allowing that. He allowed me to get within a couple of feet of him, and I would, reach out to see if he wanted to sniff. He did not want to sniff. He would get up and run away with his tail down. Humans were terrifying, basically, was the message I was getting, but dogs were okay. And I didn't really blame him, but I also didn't want him to starve, and I didn't want him to get hit by a car. So I kept waiting and feeding. And sometimes there was like raccoon poop by the bowl of food that I had left out, which was empty. So I wasn't sure if I was feeding the dog or if I was feeding the raccoons, but I was doing my best. And then, it was the weekend, I had to work. And Sunday afternoon, I got home from work, and I was working day shift while I was orienting to a new job. That's the other thing that was going on. There's been a lot. I have taken a job in the labor and delivery unit at my hospital, which is super exciting because that is the reason I got into nursing, and that is something I feel very passionate about. But as evidenced by my third child being born at home and my first two children being born unmedicated, I don't ascribe to the standard practices of American birth, I guess. I didn't want a scheduled C-section. I didn't want to take all the pain meds that are available. I wasn't interested. I wanted to do it naturally, like my mother before me and my sister after me, and I did those things. And now here I am being a part of that machine. And I very much feel like someone who has wandered into a cult and has not drunk the Kool-Aid a lot of the time. And especially the first 3-4 weeks of orientation, where everyone has big opinions on how to do the job. Everyone is very quick to warn me that that this is the most litigious part of the hospital. I love the work. I love helping people give birth. It's such a special time. So this has been it's been a tough month. So anyway, on top of all of that, that was all of September. I could only work weekends to do day shift orientation. And on a Sunday afternoon, I got home and I saw the stray, and I saw somewhere between a half dozen and a dozen of my neighbors out in the street trying to encircle the dog in a way that was supposed to catch him. But it's a dog, and the people with 10 yards in between, of course he was getting away. And I was like, I pulled into my driveway. I was like, guys, I got this. I just rolled the window down, pulled into my driveway, ran into the house, got some dog food, shook it at the stray, took it into the kennel where I had been feeding him, and then walked away. And guess what happened? He went in there to eat the food, and I closed the door. And suddenly I had trapped the dog. Nobody had to worry about it anymore. Everything was fine. Well, this turned out to be an attacked male dog. And at first he was starving and terrified, and I was a little nervous of him because, I'm not an idiot. I don't really want to get attacked by a strange dog. I don't know how he feels about people, what people have done to him before. So I'm being very cautious. So I'm feeding him when he can't bite me. He didn't attempt it, but I'm being overly cautious because I understand that the potential for injury is there. But eventually, he's stuck in this indoor-outdoor kennel situation. The indoor part is just like a doghouse, sort of, but it's built into the inside of the garage. There's a dog door that goes into the garage, and then there's this sort of nest box that can be opened from inside the garage, but also can be locked closed, and was closed when I put him in there. And then there's an exterior part with 8-foot fencing and concrete floors. We've talked before, Chopper and I have talked about trying to convert it into some sort of chicken coop, but I don't think it would be very feasible. And it would probably make the whole garage smell. And the raccoons could still get in, most likely. I mean, even if we put a ceiling on it, so we'd be better off to just buy a different chicken coop if we ever do have chickens. But we got the dog in there, and I fed him for a couple of days, regularly. Dog food, raw eggs, wet food, anything, and it just in small quantities, plenty of water, so that he could start to feel better. But it's also fall in Minnesota, so the temperatures are starting to drop, and this dog is still outdoors, and he has no meat on his bones to keep him warm, and it's miserable. And then he's been pooping in this little kennel, obviously, and I don't want to just leave him in there with his own filth. So eventually I sort of sidle into the kennel and pick up the poop while he's distracted with another round of food. And then I've picked up the poop, but there's still, poop on the cement. It's just how it goes. And I don't want him stuck in there with that. So I bust out the hose and a miracle happens. Ready? He's crazy. She's so happy. He goes from being this tail down, scared, miserable animal to an excited puppy. I'm spraying, jet blasting the hose through the fence to try and clean the bottom of the kennel, and he starts jumping at the hose like this is his favorite game in the history of all games. And he's trying to eat the food. Again, I'll put some B-roll in because it's great. He's so happy. And it was a totally different dog. And we did that for a little while, but eventually, it looked clean and it wasn't that warm out. And this kennel is not in the sunshine, it's in the shade. And it had been like a half hour or whatever. And I'm looking at him and he's all, I pulled that carpet out. So I had some spare pieces of the carpet and I had put a chunk of the carpet down inside of the thing, but it had gotten wet from this spray and from how he was jumping into the water and it was deflecting and whatever. And he is all huddled up into a tiny little ball and just looks miserable and cold. So I get a towel and I take it outside and I, again, sort of sidle into the kennel and I put the towel on him and I start to dry him off. And at that point, he starts to lean into my legs and sort of groan and just be like a friendly dog. And it was just a total transformation. And at that point, my heart just melted and I was like, okay, let's just be friends forever. And when all the neighbors were trying to trap this dog, one of them had been in contact with a pit bull rescue who turned out to be a neighbor of ours down the street. So we trapped him on a Sunday afternoon, and Monday evening, she came by. It was for Pitt's Sake Rescue, which is a great pun. And she said that it just happened to be their monthly board meeting. So she stopped by, she brought along a vet tech. They had a scanner to check if the dog had a chip, And she also brought along this other guy who was like a dog trainer, and they all sort of came and had a look at the dog. And she explained to me, like, what do I need to do? They brought me a collar for him, an extra leash, and I got my knitting out. There was a phone call. I think I cut it. I'm going to cut it so you won't know, but I had some time to get my knitting out. Anyway, so the dog trainer, the vet tech, and the rescue owner came and had a look at this stray. And at the time, I was very much hopeful that I could like keep him and incorporate him into my dog family and save the day. I mean, that's really what it was. I love the stories of people who are bring home strays and lost animals and injured animals as children and nurse them back to health, and then eventually they become vets and things like that. And I always wanted to be one of those people, and I am not. Every attempt that I have attempted to rescue an animal that I find and take it to like the nature center, the wildlife rescue rehabilitations, whatever it's called. I can't remember. It's in Roseville. They have ended up like putting the animal down because I rescued a crow years ago and it had West Nile virus, and that was the reason that it was just flopping around on the ground, was that it was like half dead already, and that was just the most humane thing to do. And similarly with other experiences that have never been happy endings, I've never been the one who gets to nurse them back to health, and I really wanted to change that storyline. And here's this dog that the vet tech got a look at him, and she said that she thinks that he's probably about 5 years old, and he had some sort of an abscess or something going on in his mouth that looked painful and swollen, and it was like his one lower lip was super droopy and drooly, and I called my own vet, and they were crazy busy, could not get me in for anything for at least a month, and that's not going to help with an abscess. So eventually I found an urgent care vet that was way out in one of the suburbs, and took him out there and got him his shots, got him antibiotics for the abscess, which was very effective. His mouth looked all better by the end of them. And yeah, it was pretty good. But then I'm feeding him up, and I'm feeding him up, and I'm feeding him up. And I think originally we caught him, and by we I mean I, on October 2nd. October 6th was Chase's birthday. He was 4. And, the rescue lady gave me kennels so that we could have all the dogs in the house, but this dog hated its kennel, and he did not cry nearly as much when he was in the outdoor kennel attached to my garage. And eventually what I ended up doing is closing up the garage and opening the door inside the garage so that he could go into the whole garage and be more comfortable and be warm in a more inside environment. But, I was trying to incorporate that. I was trying to introduce everybody. It had only been a couple of days, so I was pushing it. And we had done an introduction. We were calling the stray dog Buddy, because I like to name my dogs after musicians who have passed away. I have Ziggy Stardust, and I had Prince, and I have Django Reinhardt. And so this guy was going to be Buddy Holly, because that Weezer song kept popping into my head that he looked just like Buddy Holly. So we introduced Django and Buddy on neutral territory, and they did well, and took them for walks together, and I had them in the house together, and I don't know what happened, but on Chase's birthday, they got into a fight. And my grandfather bred Chow Chows, who are, if you're unfamiliar with the breed, were originally bred to be fighting dogs in China. And they're beautiful, fluffy dogs who are sort of unusual. They don't usually smell like dogs, and they bond very strongly to one human and one human only. And they tend to drive their babies out of the pack. So when my aunt's dog got pregnant a little sooner than she was planning, and had puppies, she had to decide whether she wanted to keep the mother or any of the offspring, and ended up ultimately deciding that she wanted some of the offspring, and had to rehome the mother, who had just come into her first heat. So she was, I think, pretty devastated. It was a beautiful dog, but it was, there was just no chance of it. And my grandmother, the reason I'm telling you this story, there were always a ton of dogs at my grandparents' house. And my grandmother at one point waded in and tried to break up a dog fight between two of the family dogs, and got her arm broken by one of the dogs, giving her a good chomp. I don't know the full details of it, and she's passed away at this point, so I can't really go ask her. Nor would she necessarily want to relive it, because in her later years, that was often something it was one of the refrains, things she would say. If I had known how much trouble these dogs were going to be, I never would have married your grandfather. Just like, well, I'm glad I'm here. Sorry for your troubles. But knowing that, when these dogs started to fight, I tried screaming. I tried opening the door and running out of the house to see if one of them would follow me, and that didn't work. And eventually what happened, Buddy was like a pity breed, and he got a hold of Django and part of Django's collar, and was playing tug of war with Django's collar and maybe his skin, and would not let go. And I ended up sort of taking a dining room chair and smushing him between the chair and the wall, to the point where I could reach both of their collars and separate them. And this all happened. So I got them separated. And this all happened the reason that I was distracted and I wasn't giving these, I had been not getting enough sleep. I was so focused on all of these dogs and making sure everyone was getting enough exercise and everyone was getting enough food and everyone was getting enough love, and are we going to be okay? And it was like having newborns, multiple newborns, because every minute of every day, there was no way I was going to knit anything, because I was just consumed with these dogs, and I wanted them to be friends. And now I'm realizing that my own dogs need to be better behaved, and maybe if I just train them, and maybe I can train this new guy, and in the meantime he's starving, and what does that do to his brain? And then this fight happens. And so now I've got the dogs separated, and I put Django in a kennel, and I put Buddy in the garage, and Ziggy wasn't even in the house at the time, so nothing had happened with him. But then my parents come to celebrate the 4-year-old's birthday. They bring him a cupcake, and he won't even eat it. And they bring him a present, and he opens it, and it's a noisemaker, because my mother secretly wants to torture me. And we're having a nice time, but eventually, I have to cop to what just happened with this dog, and my mom is a chronic worrier, so now I've just given her some ammunition. And I go to check on Django, who is in a kennel, and I'd seen that he had a couple of little bite wounds or whatever, tooth marks, nothing major, But I go back in there and I like pet down his face and down his neck, and one of my hands comes away bloody. And I realize that I have not found all of the injuries. And once I get a better look at it, I realize that as a nurse, it is something that I can fix, but I don't have all of the appropriate supplies. So my mom offers to like watch Chase for me, and I leave the dog locked up, and I run to Walgreens and I buy, iodine, and I try getting butterfly strips, which of course don't fit on hairy or won't stick on hairy things, so that was useless. And I ended up buying some super glue because that is in fact what we use to close surgical wounds very often now in medicine, and it was originally developed for field dressings for the military. So, just. And then my mom helped me hold the dog, who barely flinched. I was so impressed with him. While I ended up picking out some of his own fur that had gotten embedded in the wound and cleaning it thoroughly and then gluing it shut. Well, now Buddy can't be in the house if any of the other dogs are in the house, because we're not going to do that again. And I'm still just trying to like wrap my head around how am I going to do this, and I really want to rescue this dog, and I'm still feeding him, and now he's in the main part of the garage and he's peeing and pooping everywhere, like even right next to where he eats. And it's starting to get colder, and so we're trying to put up we're not using the garage to park our cars anymore, and like it's just getting to be a disaster. And now my mom is texting me, have you gotten rid of that dog yet? Have you gotten rid of that dog yet? Have you gotten rid of that? And I'm like, no, because I still want to save him. This is a disaster. And then I am walking into the garage and my daughter is walking into the house simultaneously. And I think that Buddy is going to be more focused on me than what Bree is doing. And so I don't shut the door behind me, because I'm like, come on, you're going to go this way. I trusted him more than I should have. It's simple, like stupid. And Buddy goes running for the front door because he loved being in the house, and now he's almost completely excluded from it. And Ziggy's at the door, and Ziggy and Buddy get into it. And Ziggy is, like I was saying, this like super dog aggressive on leash, and he's a 27-pound French bulldog. Ziggy is a small dog with a big Napoleon complex, and Buddy shows him what it's actually like to fight. And Ziggy almost loses an ear. Buddy gets him around the ear. It wasn't bad enough the first time. Now we've got the two aggressive dogs, and it's like the more we feed Buddy, the more he's got the muscles and the drive to cause trouble. We get them separated, and Ziggy is largely unharmed. He's just slobbered on, mostly. Another time, I tried to let Buddy by himself into the house, and the other dogs were not around at all. I had them out in the garage, and I didn't have a leash on Buddy, and he chased one of my cats all the way down the hall, and he caught her, and again, I'm screaming and running off. No, don't eat my cat, The fact that there are this many episodes to this gives you an idea of, number one, how desperately I wanted for this to work, and number two, how badly it was going. Buddy gets a hold of the cat. She is hanging from his mouth, and eventually I do find like one puncture wound, but she peed everywhere, all over him, behind her, like it was like this sprinkle down the hallway as she runs away from it. She's all fluffed up and she's running for her life, and they're on this like slick fake wood, and so they're just scrabbling, and it's like, and oh, it was just, I mean, it was in retrospect sort of hilarious, but at the time terrifying. And he gets a hold of her and she scratches the crap out of him. And so, like, he was bleeding everywhere and she was fine, like, except that she was traumatized. I gotta, she wouldn't let me anywhere near her because I'm the one that let this dog in. And now it's been a couple of weeks and she's still, every time a door to the exterior of the house opens, she's like, who's coming in? Very scared. Ooh, I tried filming this from a different location and now I'm getting the super sunshine. Hello, we're washed out. Oh yeah, don't lean forward. So everything's going wrong and I'm getting less and less convinced that this is going to work. And now Chopper's starting to look up like horror stories of pit bulls that have eaten children, and we couldn't possibly leave. The pit bulls never. Chase was not listening about don't leave food down, don't run screaming away from the dog. He was not listening to any of those directions. He was doing all of those things, and the dog, well, I'm fairly sure that there was food on the ground when the first fight happened, because that is the thing that, Django would have been interested in and Buddy would have gone for. But the run, like the prey drive testing, as far as the child was concerned, the dog did not engage, which, thank God. And then I had to go to work. And now I was back to working nights. And that was harder for everybody else because I had been sort of home more while I was doing my initial orientation stuff. I'm still orienting, but now I'm back to night shift, which is the shift I usually work. And about a week and a half ago, maybe 10 days now, I left for work 6 p.m. I got to work. Shift starts at 7. Got onto the floor, got introduced to the people that I was going to be taking care of, and sat down to start my charting for 7:30 and got a phone call. And Kobe doesn't call me at work. And originally I didn't answer it. And my preceptor was like, are you going to get that? That might be... And I answered the phone, and Kobe had fallen asleep. During the day, Chase and I were outside, and Kobe was outside, and we were all like doing stuff together. And Chase kept asking to go visit Buddy. But I needed to take a nap. Chase needed to take a nap. Kobe was using the leaf blower on the yard. And so I was like, I kept putting him off. No, we'll go see him later. No, you can ask your dad again later. No, we can't do it right now. We have to go take a nap. And apparently, after I left, Chopper was so exhausted. Oh yeah, because he was on antibiotics after having some sort of abscess in one of his fingers and having to go to the hospital get it drained. And he was like, this antibiotic is really taking it out of me. I can't sleep at night. I can't do this. I can't do that. And so he sat down in his favorite recliner in the basement and immediately fell asleep. And Chase decided that would be a good time to go visit the dog in the garage. And, spoiler alert, no children were harmed in the making of this story. But there was another dog fight. And this time it wasn't something that I could fix at home. And at the end of it, I called St. Paul Police Non-Emergency, and they sent out somebody from Animal Control, and I surrendered the stray dog, who I was calling Buddy. And I still have a lot of guilt and shame for, I don't know, either not recognizing my own limits or for not being able to do the thing I set out to do and rescue the dog. And Ziggy was in surgery for a number of hours. Chopper woke up to the sound of a dog fight and came upstairs, and Ziggy was being shown what real fights are like again. And again, he's like a 10-year-old Frenchie. It's not like he knows. Oh, God. It was just... So I went home and I got my dog and I went to the closest emergency vet clinic, and they got a good look at him and took him in. And he ended up in surgery for a couple of hours. And in the middle of the surgery, they had to call me back and ask for permission to do more things because the way that Buddy had gotten a hold of his face, part of his jawbone had been sheared off. There was like shards of bone. And I will not add the pictures that I took to the B-roll for this part. But needless to say, the vet offered me at great expense the possibility of waiting for a specialty dog dentist to come in and do MRIs and fix potentially whatever was broken. But I took the cheaper way, which was to just remove that section of bone that was no longer attached properly. And they kept it for me so I could see how much of the old man's jaw is no longer attached. It was a shearing injury, so like his jaw is still intact. He didn't have to have anything wired shut. He is supposed to eat soft foods only for the time being. He had to have some stitches along the side of his face, and he had a corneal scratch, so we're putting antibiotics on his eye. And everybody who was anywhere near it has a lot of guilt. And the toddler, whatever, he's 4. What do you call it? The preschooler? The child, yeah, he walked out the front door, left it swinging open. It has problems with latching anyway, so it probably wouldn't have shut behind him even if he'd tried. And then he walked into the garage and he opened all the doors. So we had a number of talks with him about listening, because we had explained to him numerous times the dangers of these dogs getting together and leaving doors open. And we'd put baby gates back up, trying to like keep everybody separated, and it wasn't enough to keep the 4-year-old from opening up all the gates. Chopper has a lot of guilt about falling asleep. I have a lot of guilt about putting everybody in this situation in the first place. So needless to say, knitting was not real high on my list. And now I've been talking about it for an hour and I haven't shown you a single thing. But that's where it's at. That's what happened. And eventually I did start knitting again. I cast on the Douglas Cardi. Here, I'll show you. This is the only thing I've been working on. Everything else is going to be the same as it was before. I needed something that did not require a lot of thought. I'm using pre-rainbow stripey. Oh, yeah, it's all washed out now because of the lovely sunshine. These all have funny, like... Oh, man. The light is getting to be too much. They all have funny names like Satyr and... I don't remember. This one's Chimera. I had bought a couple of smaller... There are smaller cake versions, but then I took one of them to make a baby blanket for a friend of mine. And then I wasn't sure if I would have enough, but just one cake of this is like 1,080 meters or yards or something. And that seemed like I can use the big one for the body of the sweater and I can use the small one for the sleeves, and they'll have different stripes that are all kind of along the same colors, and it would be fun. And speaking of the Douglas Cardi, there's a kit for sale right now to support Shelby Monet, who, if you follow any of this knitting world stuff, Gigi made it is a woman out of New Jersey who has done a lot for the community in terms of, like, first of all, loving the color orange, and second of all, calling out racism in the knitting community, because she is a person of color and she has had a lot of rough treatment at the hands of people who allegedly want to serve the knitting community, but maybe only if they're of European descent. And so her daughter, Shelby, realized during the pandemic that she wanted to be a purveyor of books to help people find books to read, which is awesome. You know how much I love to read books. And if you didn't know, let me just say, my goal for this year was to read 120 books, and I'm already up to 140, and it's still only October. So, you know, if 90% of those happen to be smutty romance novels, I'm still, the other 10% are still fascinating historical fiction and nonfiction and all sorts of good stuff. I'm having a good time. You know, the brain is active. It's important. What did I want to say? Anyway, oh yeah, the Douglas Carty, and so that's Drea Renee Knits. Andrea Mari came up with the pattern, and then Magpie Fiber? No, Farmer's Daughter Fibers? Shoot, I can't remember. They are doing a sort of fundraiser to help Shelby open a brick and mortar store. Shelby has an online bookstore right now, and is hoping to open an actual bookstore that is live and in person. Not anywhere that I'll get to go anytime soon, but that's okay, because somebody had a similar vision here in St. Paul, and a week or two ago I attended the grand opening of Black Garnet Books on University Avenue, and that is also a purveyor of books written by people of color. And the turnout for that grand opening, which I heard about the day before and just on a whim was like, I'm going to go. The turnout was amazing. The bookstore was still like half unstocked. It's not a very big space, but it was a lovely space, just beautiful, and had some like chairs and even a little spot for, you know, people who have friendly dogs to have their little dogs sit. And you know, so I'm not going there for that. But the store was brand new, so you know there was a lot of waiting. Turned out to be because they were signing every single person who purchased from them up for their, you know, whatever, their points club or their newsletter or something. I signed up for it too, but I've forgotten already what it was. But so like, if the bookstore was this big, we'll do it this way. If it was a square this big, the line went like this. It was like a spiral all the way through the middle of the store. It was great. And, you know, it was having a good time chatting with the woman who was next to me in line, and, you know, reading every book I could get my hands on as we went by them in the line. And I bought a couple of books, and I read one of them right away, and the other one is The Parable of the Sower by Olivia Butler, which I've been meaning to read for a long time. Although Kindred was really the one I was after, but I didn't have any copies of that left. Again, half stacked. But that's what's been going on. That's why I haven't been knitting. I've been reading, because I needed a little escapism after my brush with disaster. Ziggy is still healing from his surgery. Somebody peed in the house the last couple. We're having some problems with jealousy, I think, amongst the remaining dogs, because Django is very annoyed that Ziggy is living a life of luxury where he eats only wet food or dry food that's been soaked in something that will make him actually eat it so that it's soupy, like beef broth or warm water and raw eggs or whatever. Like, Django's getting real annoyed. He hasn't been exercised as much as he was. But while Buddy was here, I would take them all for the same walk. So I was walking twice as much as usual. And now Ziggy's supposed to be on reduced activity. And so I haven't taken Django for the walks that he deserves. And Buddy was a monster chewer, so he got a hold of a number of Django's tennis balls, and Django loves to fetch. And so all of a sudden we have a shortage of fetching toys, which doesn't help. So, yeah, I think that's about it. I think this is the other thing that I worked on a little bit. Well, there are two other things I suppose I worked on. I went for things that were simple stockinette stitch. I showed you this. This was my personal do we even want to talk about knitting? I've been talking for so long. It's supposed to be what you're here for, but whatever. There's a million of these in the world. I'm just here to visit. Hi, friends. So I was trying to design this for myself. Oh, and it's already pilling, but it's going to be a tank top. I told you I wear tank tops and sweatshirts a lot, so I thought, and I've been doing it sort of with short rows. I made the collar, and then I made the armholes out of a I-cord, and then I've been doing short rows back and forth and picking up off the I-cord. And then the front and the back so far. And then I ran out of yarn and I had to go get more, and the stuff that they had was the same color but didn't have a sparkle. There's a sparkle in the first half and then no more sparkle after that. It's not that sparkly, you can't super tell, but I worked on that a little bit. I worked on this a lot, as you can see, since it was brand new cast on since the last time I was here. It's a bottom-up sweater. It's a big coat. Well, this yarn isn't super thick, so it's not going to be like a super chonky, extra cozy, but I'm hoping that it's a super comfy around the house sweater. That's the plan. And then I've been working on Breeze Blanket a little bit more, and I'll insert a picture or two of how gigantic it is. I didn't realize until I laid it out on my king-size bed. It's enormous, which is fun. But I want to finish that before Christmas or her birthday, which are basically within a week of each other, and give that to her this year. I think she'd like it. It's cozy, you know. And then I can get started on one for her brothers. I think I ran out of steam. So, thanks for stopping by and listening to my sob stories. I have taken a couple of very luxurious baths in my new bathtub, and I finally completed another home improvement project. There was a weird gap between the wall and my stove, and I made a tiny little table that just goes behind that gap between the stove and the wall so that nothing else could get dropped back there, because someone who doesn't live here anymore once knocked a whole cast iron skillet behind the stove and then didn't climb back there to get it. Didn't say anything. So all of a sudden my favorite pan to cook with had just disappeared. I was very annoyed. I appreciate you listening to my babble. I'm hoping to be a little bit better about talking to you more often about what's going on with me. And I'll probably bring it back around to making content, spinning, knitting. I have an idea. I'm really excited about it. It was so special. And so I'm just throwing this out here. And maybe it'll never happen because so far me and the sewing machine are not like joined at the hip. But it's been such an honor to be involved in people's birth stories that I really wanted to do something to commemorate the ushering in of these lives. Like, I have been present for the birth of like a dozen people, new humans who have come out into the world and taken their first breath in my presence. And like, that's really special. And I want to do something to commemorate that without like violating their rights to health information privacy. So the thing that I was thinking that might be cool would be to make like quilt squares that look like calendars and just make a little French knot or a hash mark, you know, for the children that I have helped bring into the world. You know, and maybe that's a big goal. Maybe I should probably like slow my roll a little bit, but I just couldn't think of anything else that would make sense for, because I don't, it's something that you could keep adding to even if it's done. Like, you could keep adding a knot and have a blanket that looks like a quilt, have a calendar, and just keep adding to it, basically. I didn't want to just like write things down. That didn't make sense. And again, health information privacy. And I didn't want to just let it go. It feels special. It feels like something I want to keep track of. And I would love any ideas that you had if you wanted to suggest something. If not, that's okay too. I don't know. So that's more than enough of this. Thank you so much for watching me and playing along when we have an unusual episode like today. And oh, here comes my friend. So it's time I get out of here.
Whoa. I just watched this monster chase these like ball humans.
What? Yeah, I gotta hear about this. I'll see you later.
And
Bye.
then